about administration rights, I see no point. In many cases, what the customer really needs and wants is reporting view to the service and how it's serviced. They do not want the hassle of administration. Also, that would be sharing of responsibility. And if we, as a service provider, are responsible for that service, we are not able to give the customer rights to manage this service that we are responsible for. Does that make any sense?
So do you give or do not give the admin rights?
We do not.
I don't know whether you can make any rule whether the service provider should or should not give. What we do is for certain services you do have the admin right. You have the admin right to the data itself, insofar as how the service itself presents that data. For example, SharePoint. You can admin and control who has access to that data. You can administer the environment that the data resides in. But of course, you don't have admin rights to the back-end systems like storage or backup, or that's something that we take care of. But again, the answer really, I suppose, is yeah, you can probably have the admin rights to an environment like this if you so desire. But I think this is a more a contractual issue. For Fujitsu, what you're buying from them is the service, which doesn't only include the stuff that comes out of the network. They also manage it and administer it and take care of it for you. So you're basically buying for that service. So why would you want to have admin control over that in that case?
No, I suppose this is not a matter that would typically be included in the contracts themselves, but certainly then you will have appendices describing what is the service that is being provided and what are the kind of the service specifications and requirements. And there, if you have admin rights, then that probably should be included in the specifications of the service that you are handling it yourself and not the service provider. But from legal point of view, I don't see any specific reasons having it either way, the other way, or the other way. It's up to the customer and service provider to agree on this matter. But certainly that is one of the important things to agree on, that what actions and what rights does the customer have.
But isn't there quite a, let's say, big responsibility barrier? So if you give the customer the capability of, let's say, wiping out the whole database, that severely limits the responsibility of the provider, because they can always say that, it was your fault.
Absolutely. I mean, if customer does it himself, then it can't be blamed on the service provider if everything goes wrong.
Well, it's like anything. Once you get a lot of rights come with a responsibility. So you can't have one without the other.
Yes, and of course there are levels of administration. Of course, some minor administration rights. It will only help us if the customer wants to do some of the work himself.
I agree fully. This is coming with a responsibility, but if we are talking about security and the trust layer between the actual border between the cloud provider and the cloud user, that's a very important issue. Where does this border go? Where is I wrote this as the biggest obstacle in security is avoiding the gap, because we're talking about new ways to bring services, and in somewhere here in this service flow, there is a gap in security. The provider thinks he has done security up to this level, and the user thinks that the provider actually have given security constraints even higher up. But maybe he didn't, and that's a contractual discussion. And also, not always that, but also understanding. I mean, here is a lot of possibilities for misunderstanding each other as a provider and a customer when it comes to where is the security, who is responsible for what part. And that's what I call the security gap, and that's what I put as the most important part here. So if you talk about getting full root access to your virtual machine, like in Amazon, for instance, where you do an SSH directly into your virtual machine, that's fine. But you're actually in the sandbox there, so that's not probably what we're talking about here. It's a specific case. But if you go more up to platforms, then what's actually brought by the vendor is bigger, the more complex services, and then the user needs to back off a little bit, and because he cannot have a root access to the very bottom machines in a platform, as I see it. Yes, so basically we should compare security with what we have today, and that's always lost here. I think people think we will go in here for a paradise, but look at what we have now. It's really a mess. And do you have an SLA with your provider today? How good is that SLA if something really happens? So let's see how much it would cost you to sue some big company who didn't deliver his hosting service to you, compared to have a cloud provider that has a number of data centers that may be always very unlikely that all three will be down at the same time, and so on. So I think we're going, as someone mentioned earlier in the talks here, we are definitely going for a change here, and some is for better and some is maybe for worse, especially if we expect everything to be great. I think that comes to, if you really look at the technical parts here, at some point you have to compute on the data, probably. And we cannot compute on encrypted data, what I know. I mean, you need to open it up some point, and that's been done at this cloud provider's place. So I'm not sure if you can have encrypted data all the way, and you can do things and analyze this encrypted data without actually opening it up at some point. And that opening up will be within the cloud provider. So you're not safe if you think you're safe. Yes.
From legal point of view, a short comment on this. This of course relates to data security, and the most important data security regulations in Finland come from the Personal Data Act concerning personal data, and there are of course different levels of requirements for encryption. I think when it comes to health information, the data protection ombudsman has said that the data should be encrypted at least when transferred over the internet. How it is stored, then it's also a practical question. Indeed, if you can't use it, then it's not very practical to have it encrypted if you can't compute it and so forth. But even in that case, one should probably think about ways to make it anonymous so that it can't be connected to one particular patient straight away. But nevertheless, cloud computing and virtualized services in health sector would be a big challenge in the future, I think. And something that will be needed, I'm sure.
Okay, that one, just a short one. So encryption of data here is very important for the contracts. So basically, saying where did my part end, and someone opened it up and continued with the data. And I mean, again, this is really important to be able to trace where something went wrong, and if you have encrypted logs or whatever, you can actually find who did that last check and so on. So it's a contractual part, definitely.
On encryption, I think the important issue here is, for the most part, the service should allow for encryption. Like if I look at, not talking about cloud at all, in Microsoft we have a fairly simple data classification policy. We have data which we call high business impact data, which can be things that relate to our intellectual property or relates to PII, or personally identifiable information. And our policy says that we cannot transport or store that information without it being encrypted at all. And I think the same, like if we were to buy cloud services from somebody, I think the same would apply for that particular service. We'd have to apply whatever policy we have in place for the data that we're going to be storing and using in that cloud service. We would have to apply the same rule. If the service does not allow for data encryption while it's being transported, then we couldn't use it. If it wouldn't allow for the data to be stored or encrypted when it's stored, we couldn't use it. So again, I don't think there's a clear-cut answer here, but the service should definitely allow for encryption. And I think encryption, especially when you're talking about transporting the data, I think the internet is the biggest cloud of them all. Once you put the data leaves your organization, whatever the outgoing port might be, and it's transferred to somebody else's organization, you have no idea where it goes. The email from you to me is actually going to go all the way from here to Redmond in the United States, and then come all the way back here through our internal network. Do you know that? No, you don't. So you have to kind of assume that the data will need to be encrypted while it is transported, and the service should allow for that. And the same goes for the back end. Where is it stored? If the customer has a requirement that the data should be encrypted while it's being stored in our data centers, we would certainly allow for that. We actually encourage that for some cases.
Yep. Also, what comes to my mind is when buying these services, you need to be very specific when you're designing your request for proposal. And in many cases, customer uses some sort of consulting company. And we really hope that these experts are really experts enough to define these requests for proposals and requirement sheets of these. I mean, I've seen some RFPs that make no sense. They are asking something that you cannot deliver. And also at the same time, they will be very strict that you will deliver the service that's being asked for. Like somebody said before, in some stages, in almost every situation, the data must be clear in some stage of processing. I think it's more like a matter of how it's described, and after that, doesn't make sense. I mean, the whole solution is the one that counts.
And also there is the kind of inertia that in the internet it took more than 10 years before SSL encryption became widespread. And before that everything was clear text. And I think we are only now starting the situation where people are considering that how about encrypting data also on disks, because we are finally creating the public key infrastructure, and in some organizations you have that already, and in homogeneous, let's say, Microsoft environments, you are able to do that almost automatically. But that still, I think it needs a lot of education that customers know about the capabilities. Our practical experience is that when we tell the customer that, okay, you can encrypt your measurement data that they deliver to us so that we can't open it. It's all okay and fine until we tell that there is a different price tag for the encryption. Then okay, leave it unencrypted and move to the next subject. So that's the de facto situation from our experience.